You are busy. You are tired. And somewhere in the back of your mind, there is a small voice asking, is this it? Is this what life is supposed to feel like? You wake up early. You work hard. You answer messages, attend meetings, check off your list. And then you go to sleep and do it all again. Day after day, week after week. And somehow in all of that motion, something feels missing. You are not alone in feeling this way. 2,000 years ago, a man sat down at his desk and wrote a letter to his closest friend. His name was Lucius Annaeus Seneca. He was old by then. He had been one of the most powerful men in Rome, an advisor to emperors, a playwright, a philosopher. He had been rich, famous, and feared. And he had also been exiled, nearly executed, and finally ordered to die by the very man he once mentored. His friend's name was Lucilius, a younger man, a government official, curious and searching. Seneca wrote to him not as a teacher to a student, but as one honest man to another. He wrote about the things most people avoid: time, fear, anger, wealth, and the strange comfort of being alone. He wrote about the things that kept him up at night, and the things that finally gave him peace. And those letters survived. Through wars, floods, fires, and forgotten empires, those letters survived. They are still here. This lesson is for English learners who want more than words. The meaning here is 2,000 years deep. Today I want to share 10 of those letters with you. Not as history, not as philosophy homework, but as a friend passing something along and saying, read this. It helped me. It might help you too. Seneca wrote it for Lucilius, and he wrote it for you too. Some of these letters will feel familiar, like someone finally said what you have been thinking. Others will surprise you, maybe even challenge you. A few might make you stop and sit quietly for a moment. That is exactly the point. We begin. Letter 1. On time. Think about yesterday. Where did it go? Can you name the hours? Can you say with honesty that you used them well? Most people, if they are truthful, cannot. The hours slipped by, the day ended, and something that can never be returned was quietly taken. Seneca understood this better than almost anyone who ever lived. His very first letter to Lucilius begins not with a greeting, not with news, but with a warning. It is 3 words in Latin. 3 words that have followed readers for 2,000 years. Ita fac Lucili. Do it, Lucilius. Do it now. Claim your time before someone else does. He writes, Omnia Lucili aliena sunt tempus tantum nostrum est. Everything Lucilius belongs to others. Time alone is ours. Think about that. Your money can be taken. Your health can fail. Your reputation can be destroyed by one bad day. But your time, the hours of your life, those were supposed to be yours. And yet most of us give them away freely, without thinking, without asking for anything in return. You give your time to people who do not deserve it. You give it to habits that do not feed you. You give it to worry, to scrolling, to waiting for a moment that feels more real than this one. Seneca calls this the great tragedy of human life. Not that life is short, he says, but that we waste so much of it. There is a small book he wrote before his letters called De brevitate vitae, on the shortness of life. In it, he says something that stops people cold the first time they read it. He says life is not short. We make it short. We are given enough time. We simply fail to use it. A French writer named Michel de Montaigne read Seneca hundreds of years after Seneca died. He called the letters Mon Breviaire, which means my prayer book. He read them the way a person reads something they keep returning to, not because they have forgotten, but because they keep finding something new. Montaigne understood what Seneca was pointing at. Not guilt, not productivity, something quieter. The life you want is already here. You just have to stop giving it away. You spend hours on things that do not matter. You waste days on opinions that will never change. You let others take your mornings, your evenings, your weekends, your attention. And at the end, you wonder where it all went. Seneca's answer is simple. Uncomfortable, but simple. Stop. Claim the next hour. Not tomorrow, not when things calm down. Now. Not every hour has to be great. Not every moment has to be meaningful. But you should be the one choosing. You should be the one deciding what this hour is for. That small act of choosing, Seneca says, is the beginning of a life that is actually yours. That was his first letter. Letter 2. On busyness. Being busy is not the same as being alive. Most people do not believe this. Not really. Because when someone asks how you are doing, what do you say? You say, busy. And somehow, that word feels like an answer. It feels like proof that your life has value, that your days matter, that you are needed. But Seneca saw through this a long time ago. He wrote to Lucilius about the people around him in Rome. The politicians, the merchants, the men rushing through the forum with important looks on their faces. He watched them and felt something close to sadness, because he could see what they could not see. They were moving constantly and going nowhere. He called it inquieta inertia, restless idleness, the strange condition of being endlessly active while doing nothing that truly matters. You know this feeling. You have lived it. You finish a full day of work and sit down in the evening and feel strangely empty. You were busy all day. You answered everything, attended everything, responded to everything. And yet something inside you is asking, what did I actually do today? What moved forward? What was built? Here is what Seneca understood that most people miss. Motion is not progress. Activity is not meaning. A young man, a friend of a friend, once described his life this way. He said he woke up every morning with a full list and went to bed every night with a longer one. He was always catching up, always behind. He said he had not sat quietly for more than 10 minutes in over a year, not because he was lazy, because he was terrified of what he might hear in the silence. Seneca would have recognized him immediately, because busyness, Seneca says, is often just fear wearing a productive face. Fear of slowing down. Fear of looking at your life honestly and asking whether the direction you are running in is actually where you want to go. It is easier to stay busy than to sit still with that question. And here is the part that surprises most people. Seneca was one of the wealthiest men in Rome. He owned multiple houses. He had influence, staff resources that most people could not imagine. By every measure the world uses, he had succeeded. And he still wrote this letter. He still sat down and told his friend, be careful. The trap of busyness catches everyone. It caught me, too. That matters. This is not advice from someone who never had to work, never had obligations, never felt the pressure of a demanding life. This is advice from someone who lived inside that pressure for decades and saw what it cost. Seneca does not want you to do less. He wants you to do what matters. There is a difference between a full life and a busy life. A full life has things in it that you chose, work you care about, rest you actually take, people you are truly present with. A busy life has things in it that accumulated while you were not paying attention. The question Seneca leaves Lucilius with is quiet and a little uncomfortable. If you stopped being busy tomorrow, what would be left? If the answer frightens you, that is the beginning of something important. Letter 3. on fear of death. What are you afraid of, really? Not the surface fears. Not the meeting that might go badly, or the bill that is a little late, or the conversation you have been putting off. Deeper than those. The fear underneath all the other fears. For most people, if they are honest, it comes back to the same place. The end. The fact that this will not go on forever. That one day your name will be called, and you will have to leave everything behind. Seneca wrote about this more than almost any other subject. And his approach is not what you might expect from a philosopher 2,000 years old. He does not tell you not to be afraid. He does not offer you comfort in the usual sense. He does something stranger and more useful. He says, think about it. Not once, regularly, deliberately. Sit with the fact that you will die and let it teach you something. The Romans had a phrase for this. Memento mori. Remember that you will die. It sounds dark. It sounds like the kind of thing you say at a funeral, not at breakfast. But the Stoics used it the way a compass is used, not to frighten themselves, but to find direction. When you remember that your time is genuinely limited, the unimportant things fall away on their own. Every morning is borrowed. Every evening is a gift. Every year is time you were not guaranteed. Seneca writes that most people live as though they have a second life waiting. As though they can afford to postpone the things that matter, the conversations, the work they actually care about, the people they love. As though there is always more time coming. There is not. Steve Jobs, standing in front of students at Stanford University in 2005, said something that echoed Seneca across 2,000 years. He said that remembering he would die someday was the most important tool he had ever used to make the big choices in his life. When he faced a difficult decision, he would ask himself, if this were my last day, would I still want to do this? If the answer was no too many days in a row, he knew something needed to change. That is not despair. That is clarity. Seneca is not asking you to be morbid. Seneca does not want you to sit in a dark room and dwell on endings. His point is that the fear of death, when you never look at it directly, quietly shrinks your life. It makes you cautious in the wrong ways. It makes you hold back. It makes you choose safe and comfortable over meaningful and true. Because if you never think about death, you never fully think about life. The person who has made peace with the fact that this will end, who has sat with that truth and let it settle, that person does not waste the morning. They do not spend years in the wrong job, the wrong relationship, the wrong version of themselves waiting for something to change. They know that waiting is a choice too, and it costs something. The ask is not to love death. He wants you to stop letting the fear of it steal your life. Face it once, clearly, and then put it down and go live. Letter 4. On friendship. Seneca begins this letter with a line that is easy to miss if you read it too fast. He says, before you make someone your friend, decide whether they deserve your trust. But once you have decided, trust them completely. Open everything to them the way you would open it to yourself. Read that again. Not be careful who you trust, not protect yourself, but once you decide someone is truly your friend, hold nothing back. Share your fears with them, your doubts, your failures, the parts of yourself you normally keep hidden. Because a friendship built only on the good days is not a friendship. It is a performance. Seneca had many friends in Rome. Senators, writers, powerful men who admired him and sought his company. He hosted dinners, exchanged favors, built relationships the way ambitious people in powerful cities always do. And then Nero turned against him. And one by one, most of those friends disappeared. They stopped writing. They stopped visiting. They crossed the street when they saw him coming. But Lucilius did not. Lucilius kept writing, kept asking questions, kept showing up in letters, if not in person, through the exile and the danger and the years when being associated with Seneca was a risk. And Seneca in his letters is clearly a man writing to someone he trusts completely. His point is simpler than it sounds. Not tactics, not networking, something older and simpler. The people you can tell the truth to are the most valuable people in your life. Protect that. Build that. And do not confuse popularity with friendship because they are almost opposites. Letter 5. On the crowd. And now for the harder letter, because the letter on friendship is warm. This one is a warning. Seneca tells Lucilius to be very careful about who he spends his time with, not because other people are bad, but because we become like the people around us slowly and without noticing. Their moods enter our moods. Their habits enter our habits. Their standards become our standards. He writes, recede in te ipse, withdraw into yourself. Not permanently, not coldly, but deliberately. Guard your inner world the way you guard something you cannot afford to lose. Epictetus, another Stoic philosopher who lived around the same time, put it this way. He said that if you spend time with people who complain, you will begin to complain. If you spend time with people who cut corners, you will begin to cut corners. Not because you are weak, but because we are all deeply shaped by the air we breathe every day. Go to the many, Seneca says, and you will return a little lesser each time. Think of it not as arrogance. Seneca himself lived in one of the most crowded cities on earth and never suggested leaving. Seneca himself lived in one of the busiest, noisiest, most crowded cities on earth. Seneca is not asking you to leave. The invitation is to notice. Notice how you feel after certain conversations. Notice which friendships leave you energized and which ones leave you quietly drained. Notice which environments bring out something better in you and which ones slowly sand it away. The people around you are either lifting you or lowering you. There is no neutral. Seneca lost almost everything when Nero decided he was an enemy. His wealth, his influence, eventually his life. But in those final years, surrounded by very few people who stayed, he wrote his most honest work. He wrote to Lucilius. He wrote to the one friend who was still there. Maybe that is its own kind of lesson. You do not need many. You need true. Letter 6. On wealth. Imagine a man who has everything. A large house, a good car, money in the bank enough that he does not need to check the number. His children go to good schools. His vacations are in beautiful places. By every measure that the world uses to count success, he has succeeded. And he cannot sleep. Not because anything is wrong, but because he is afraid of losing it. He checks his investments at midnight. He worries about the economy, about his job, about whether the people around him respect him or only respect what he has. He has more than he ever dreamed of having, and somehow it is not enough. And the gap between what he has and what feels like enough keeps growing. Seneca wrote about this man. He just used different words. In ancient Rome, wealth was displayed in marble and silver, and the number of servants you kept. The names have changed. The feeling has not. He writes to Lucilius, it is not the man who has too little who is poor. It is the man who always wants more. And then he says something that lands differently depending on where you are in life. Money was not his enemy. He had a great deal of it. This is not a lesson about giving everything away. He is asking you to notice the difference between having enough and needing more. Because those two states feel completely different from the inside, and only one of them gives you any peace. More house, more recognition, more proof that he has arrived somewhere worth arriving. Enough is not a small word. Enough is not settling. Enough is freedom. It is the moment when what you have stops owning you. The man who needs the next thing to finally feel secure will never feel secure, because the next thing arrives, and behind it is another next thing already waiting. If these letters are speaking to you, stay with me. We have 4 more, and they get deeper. The next ones are about anger, about silence, about what it means to truly learn something, and about the one thing that actually belongs to you. Stay until the end. We have 4 more letters from Seneca, and the ones ahead, they are the ones that change things. Letter 7. On anger. You know the feeling. Something happens. Someone says the wrong thing, or does the wrong thing, or does not do the thing they promised. And something inside you tightens. Your jaw. Your chest. Your thoughts start moving fast. You want to respond right now with everything you are feeling. And sometimes you do. And sometimes a few hours later you are sitting with what you said and wishing you could take it back. Seneca wrote an entire book about anger. Not a letter, a book. 3 volumes called De Ira, on anger. He studied it the way a doctor studies a disease carefully without flinching, because he wanted to understand exactly what it was and what it cost. His conclusion is short and precise. Anger is a brief madness. That is his phrase, not a metaphor, a diagnosis. When you are truly angry, your thinking changes. Your judgment narrows. You say things you do not mean. Make decisions you would never make. Calm and aim at people who are sometimes not even the real target. The anger moves faster than the mind that is supposed to guide it. It burns fast. It cuts deep. And it always costs more than you planned. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, and one of the most powerful men who ever lived, wrote in his private journal that the consequences of anger are almost always worse than whatever caused the anger in the first place. He was writing to himself. No one was supposed to read it, which means he believed it not because it sounded wise, but because he had seen it. Seneca agrees. And then he adds something that surprises people. He says, I was not a calm man, not by nature, not by default. This matters, because the advice that comes from someone who never struggled with a thing is easy to dismiss. He is not telling you to simply be calm as though you can decide it the way you decide what to wear. He is telling you what he learned after years of watching himself lose his temper and paying the price for it. What he learned is this. A pause is almost always available. A small space between what happens and how you respond. Most people do not take it because anger feels urgent, because it wants to act right now, because waiting feels like weakness. But that pause is where your power is. Anger. Seneca says almost never punishes the right person. It punishes you first. Your body carries it. Your relationships absorb it. Your reputation holds the mark of it long after the moment has passed. And the person or the situation that triggered it is usually untouched. You spend your own energy. You damage your own world. For what? The point is not to swallow everything or pretend that nothing bothers you. He is asking you to respond, not react. To speak from a place that you have chosen, not from the place that anger chose for you. The difference between those two things is the difference between a life that leaves you proud and one that leaves you apologizing. Anger punishes you first and the other person second, if at all. Seneca knew this because he lived it. He lost things to his own anger. He said things that could not be unsaid. And in his letters, in the quiet of his final years, you can hear a man who finally learned to put the fire down before it burned the house. Letter 8. On solitude. When did you last sit in a quiet room and do nothing? Not meditation with an app, not music in the background, not a podcast keeping you company while you do something else. Just you, a chair, and silence. No screen, no task, nothing to produce. For most people, even the thought of this is uncomfortable. There is a woman, someone you might recognize a version of, who kept her phone within reach every waking hour. Not because she was waiting for anything important, but because silence felt wrong to her. Empty. A little threatening. If she was alone and quiet, something would surface, some thought or feeling she had been successfully avoiding, and she was not ready to meet it. She tried once to sit for 30 minutes without her phone. She lasted 9. Seneca would have smiled, not unkindly, but with recognition. He writes to Lucilius, "Withdraw into yourself as much as you can. Seek out the company of people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those who you can improve. Do both things with intention, but also regularly go inward. Sit with yourself. Learn what is there." He is not describing loneliness. Loneliness is the pain of unwanted solitude. What Seneca is describing is something chosen, a deliberate quietness. The kind where you sit with your own thoughts long enough to find out what they actually are underneath all the noise of the day. And here is the thing about Seneca that changes how this letter reads. He did not choose solitude at first. It was chosen for him. In the final years of his life, Nero grew suspicious of him. Seneca was asked to withdraw from public life, to stop appearing at court, to retreat. What had been his world, the politics, the dinners, the conversations with powerful people, was taken from him. He did not leave Rome's social world. He was pushed out of it. And in that quiet, stripped of almost everything he had built, he wrote the letters. All of them, the ones about time and friendship and anger and wealth. They came from the silence that Nero forced on him. They came from a man who had nothing left to perform, for no audience to impress, no position to protect. Just himself and his thoughts and the page. And somehow that is when he became most himself. He wants Lucilius to understand this, and he wants you to understand it too. You do not have to wait to be forced into quiet. You do not have to lose everything before you turn inward. You can choose it now, small and regular, a few minutes in the morning, before the day takes over. A walk without headphones, an evening where the screen stays off. The person you have been avoiding in the silence is yourself, and you need to meet them. This is not about being broken or something being wrong. It is simply that the version of you that knows what it actually wants, what it values, what it is willing to fight for, and what it is ready to let go, that version only speaks in quiet. It does not shout over the noise. It waits. The woman who lasted 9 minutes tried again the next week, 12 minutes, then 20. She said that what she found in the silence was not the frightening thing she expected. It was something smaller and sadder and more honest. A few things she had been pretending were fine that were not. A few things she had been pretending were important that were not. Both kinds of knowledge, she said, were useful. Solitude gives you that. Letter 9. On learning. Seneca loved books. He read constantly, widely, hungrily. Philosophy, history, poetry, science. His letters are full of references, ideas borrowed and tested and argued with. He was, by any measure, one of the most educated men of his time. And he spent a surprising amount of energy warning people about education. Not against it. This is not a warning against reading, studying, or learning. He is saying something more precise. He is saying, watch while you are doing it. He writes to Lucilius about people he knew in Rome who had read everything and understood nothing. Men who could quote any philosopher, debate any idea, impress any room, and who had not changed a single thing about how they lived as a result. They had filled their heads. Their lives remained exactly as before. He calls this collecting knowledge the way some people collect objects. More books, more facts, more frameworks, more courses, more certificates. A growing pile of things they own but do not use. Read to grow. Think to change. Act to become. Seneca cares about all three steps in order, not the first step alone. All three. Epictetus understood this. He was a Stoic philosopher born into slavery. He owned nothing. He could be bought and sold. And yet Epictetus became one of the most influential thinkers of the ancient world, not because of what he knew, but because of how he lived. He practiced every day the discipline of responding to his circumstances with clarity and purpose, even when those circumstances were brutal. His most famous idea is simple. Some things are in your control. Most things are not. Learning to tell the difference and focusing only on what is yours to change, that is the beginning of wisdom. Not the knowing of it, the doing of it. Seneca agrees completely. He says that philosophy is not an ornament you wear. It is a tool you use. The moment learning stops changing how you act, it has stopped being useful. It has become entertainment at best, pride at worst. But Seneca adds one warning that cuts a little deeper. He says, do not confuse reading about courage with being courageous. Do not confuse studying patience with being patient. Do not confuse knowing the right answer with doing the right thing. Most people live in the gap between knowing and doing their whole lives without crossing it. You know what you should do. You know how you should treat people. You know the habits that would improve your life, the conversations you need to have, the things you need to let go. You have known for a while. The knowledge is not the problem. Reading less is not the answer. Apply more. That is what he wants. To take one thing you have learned, just one, and let it actually change something. The way you start your morning. The way you respond when you are tired and someone needs something. The way you handle the situation you have been reading around instead of walking through. A library in your head means nothing if your hands and your heart do not follow. And that is where he stops. Short on words, long on demand. And Seneca, who had read more than almost anyone who knew the whole library by heart, wrote it to remind himself as much as to teach his friend. Letter 10. On the present moment. There is something you keep forgetting. This is not carelessness or a failure to pay attention. It is because life is designed to make you forget it. The next task arrives before the current one is finished. The next worry steps forward before the current one is resolved. The next goal appears on the horizon the moment you reach the one before it. And so you live mostly in two places that do not exist. The past, which is gone, the future, which has not arrived. And the present, the only moment that is actually happening, passes by largely unwitnessed. Seneca writes about this in a letter that feels different from the others. Quieter, more careful, as though he is choosing every word with unusual attention. He says everything belongs to others. Time alone is ours. But in this letter he goes further. He says that even time, most of it we let slip away. The past is gone. The future is not promised. But right now, this moment, this breath, this is yours. Yesterday is gone. Tomorrow is a promise no one can keep. But right now is yours. He is not the first to say this. Many teachers in many traditions across many centuries have arrived at the same place. That the present moment is the only one you can actually live in. That the anxiety about the future and the grief about the past are real, but they are not happening now. Now is happening now. But Seneca says it differently from the others. because of what he knew when he wrote it. He knew he was going to die soon, not as an abstract philosophical fact, as a practical reality. Nero had turned against him fully by then. The order would come. Seneca knew it. And in that knowledge, with the end close enough to see, he sat down and kept writing to his friend. He returned to time, to the present moment, about how to live what is left of any day as though it matters, because it does. He was not writing theory. He was not filling pages with ideas he would test later. He was writing from inside the thing itself. A man with a short future choosing deliberately to live in the present. And he wrote it to Lucilius, a younger man with more time ahead of him. A man who could still do something with what Seneca was passing along. That is when the letters change meaning. They are not a philosopher's notes. They are not a wise man's advice to a student. They are what a person leaves behind when they know they are leaving. They are the things Seneca most wanted to say, stripped of everything except the truth. He was writing to Lucilius, but he was writing to himself, and he was writing to you. Seneca wrote it for Lucilius, and he wrote it for you, too. Put down what you are carrying for a moment, not forever, just for now. The past has already done what it will do. The future will ask things of you when it arrives. But right now, in this moment, there is nothing else required of you except to be here. That is the last letter. That is the one he saved for the end. Seneca died in 65 AD in his own home by his own hand, under Nero's order. Accounts say he was calm, that he spoke to the people around him until the end, that he asked for writing materials and tried to dictate one last text, though historians are not certain what it contained. He died the way he had written, honestly and without performance. He was not a saint. In his life, he had compromised accumulated wealth, served a dangerous emperor longer than he perhaps should have. He knew his own contradictions. He wrote about them. He was a man trying to live according to something he believed in, and often falling short and getting up and trying again. That is what makes the letters feel true. 10 letters, 10 ideas. Simple ones when you look at them plainly. Letter 1 said, "Your time belongs to you. Claim it." Letter 2 said, "Being busy and being alive are not the same thing." Letter 3 said, "The fear of death is what keeps many people from living." Letter 4 said, "Real friendship is built on full trust, not convenience." Letter 5 said, "The people around you are shaping you whether you notice or not." Letter 6 said, "Enough is a form of freedom, and wanting more is a form of chains." Letter 7 said, "Anger punishes you first. Respond, do not react." Letter 8 said, "The silence you are avoiding is the place where you find yourself." Letter 9 said, "Knowledge that does not change how you live is just a collection." Letter 10 said, "The present moment is the only one that is actually yours." 2,000 years. The same human life, the same human fears, the same human question underneath all the others. Am I living well? Seneca thought you could. He believed that with some honest attention, some willingness to look at the things most people avoid, a person could move towards something quieter and more solid. Not perfect, not without difficulty, but more truly themselves. He wrote 124 letters to Lucilius. We only looked at 10 today. And those 10 were enough to fill a morning or a notebook or a year of slow practice. If even one of them landed somewhere real in you, that is enough. Take that one. Carry it. See what it does. Keep listening, keep learning, and keep these lessons close to your heart, my English learners. Which letter hit you hardest? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. Until next time, take care of yourself. Goodbye.